Don't do drugs. Welcome to the 15th Floor, a Radiohead reaction podcast where a Gen X father tries to convince his Gen Z son that Radiohead is the greatest band of all time by introducing him to Radiohead music one song at a time. You'll hear him react to that song for the first time, and you'll hear me talk about how much I love that song and why I think it contributes to that idea, that Radiohead is the greatest band of all time. We really apologize. We're only getting videos out about once a week now. Jacob's in tennis, plus he works. And plus, I've got stuff each night. So with the little kids doing volleyball and baseball, it's life. I said that we were going to go back to Pablo Honey, so we're going to go back to 1993's Pablo Honey. And the number one requested song from Pablo Honey is the closer, Blowout, which is not a surprise. People love Blowout. Especially now. Blowout was not just the album closer, but during the tour for Blowout and for the Bends, they often finished with Blowout. It's kind of an interesting way to close a concert, and you'll kind of see why. And so there's some great live performances of it, but then they went, a good 20 years without ever performing Blowout as a closer, until their Moon-Shaped Pool tour, when they brought it out again a couple of times and got people really excited. So far, you've listened to a lot of closers, but I think Radiohead is very, very careful about what their openers and closers are. I've said that they just know how to lay out an album, and this one, even though it's from their first album and they probably would not agree that they were in the groove yet, I think it's a really well laid out album, and it closes brilliantly with Blowout. Blowout gives us a unique kind of foreshadowing of where this band is going to go. Not immediately, not in the Bends or even OK Computer, but much further down the road with In Rainbows and The King of Limbs and so on. Radiohead fans look at it kind of in retrospect and say, wow, that's amazing that this is what they were doing, and gives us a bit of an idea of where they're going. You'll hear very classic a vocal performance from Tom York that sounds very much Pablo Honey. You'll hear some very clean chords that sound very much Pablo Honey, but then you'll hear some influences, particularly in the percussion, that say this band has got brilliant ideas. And remember, this is 1993, so it's all very impressive. Have you ever heard Blowout?
Oh yeah, all the time. I absolutely adore it, and we should have listened to it earlier, honestly, but
because it's so good.
It's so good.
All that to say, you've never heard Blowout.
Yep.
Okay.
Just
in case people haven't seen the show, the podcast before, they're like, oh well, he's already heard this song. No, that's just your reaction to the fact that I always ask, have you ever heard this song, and you say, of course not.
That's just my prediction of how I'm going to react next time you ask me. I've come to like Pablo Honey songs so far. That's true. I don't think I've given a song anything under 7.5. So
yeah, that's right. Pablo Honey does well with you. Amongst many others, I'm sorry I've got a very short list because I know a lot of people have mentioned Blowout, but I've got Father Risky, Snekanoke, Melchior Aksak, Guy Farding, Coleman Diaz, and Pujo Ligma as people who all requested Blowout. So, from the closing track of 1993's Pablo Honey, this is Blowout.
saw that first part before the huge drop. Was there a drop? Yeah, before the drop where it all got more exciting. I did like. I mean, at first I was kind of nervous because I'm like, okay, if it stays this way, it's not going to do too much for me. I might have jinxed it saying that I haven't given a song under 7.5. But then, a small detail that I liked is that the guitar didn't have like a like it could have easily stayed in one simple pace. But no, it kind of did these little riffs, and
Yep.
the riffs are nice. Those were fun. And then it got into the pure 90s sound that everyone's familiar to, which is always a pleasure to hear.
You hear so many different things in there, and none of them necessarily are directly influenced by this song, and this song is not directly influenced by any of these. But I hear like a little bit of Dinosaur Jr., which is very 90s in that rock riff that we were just hearing in the bridge. Of course, there's the jazzy drums, Phil Selway. So this is where you get a little taste of where this band is going to go in the future, and they don't even know it yet. Where you get that Phil Selway just really using the hi-hats for this, just like a lot of songs from In Rainbows and maybe even Kid A and King of Limbs and A Moon-Shaped Pool, where you can't really place where in time the song is, and it sounds very like a lounge act, which is very good. I even hear slowly played chords where each note of the chord on the guitar is played kind of delayed and slow, which sounds has, as a Pink Floyd fan, I'll say a little bit of a Pink Floyd sound to me. But there's just so many good sounds there that I think in a time when, especially even Radiohead was doing the very pixie, loud, soft thing, this it offers a diversity that just continues throughout the song.
Turns to stone. Everything I touch, I wrapped up in sugar-coated stone.
We all know how I feel about long outros, but as my father reminded me that this is the last song of the album and usually of concerts, so that's what people want to hear, so I am a little bit okay with it, but not as okay as I would be if it was just not so long.
Yeah, you don't like long outros.
I like the vocals, because the vocals, to me, is what... I say everything carries a song, but vocals make a song like different.
Unless you're going to a Fish album concert where they're just, you don't know what they're gonna do and they're just gonna meander through their songs. the vocals tell you where you're at in a song, if nothing else. If you don't know the lyrics, or they at least tell you where you're at. But as I was saying as we were listening to the song, if this is 1994 and they haven't even released the Bends yet, and this is their closing track, their closing hymn. If this is their closing song for their concert, you want to see them go a little crazy. You want to see them just kind of play out. You want to see Johnny Greenwood kind of go a little crazy, and Phil have something to do with the drums. I love the almost Roger Taylor-like drums that he gets. Very, if you listen to the drums on Now I'm Here by Queen, I just think there's and again, I'm not saying one influences the other. Well, of course, this would have to be influenced by that. But I'm not saying that's exactly how it is. I like the use of it, and it's so good in that song, Now I'm Here, and it's so good in this song. You just want to see the band having fun, wrapping up their concert with high energy, and since this is the early 90s, and all these songs would have had a very post-grunge pop rock sound to it, this does not fit in perfectly into that category, and so it's a great way to wrap up a concert and an album.
It just got more 90s as we went on.
Is that a problem?
It's a good thing. I mean, they just threw on all the classic 90s sounds. Like they had the guitar getting louder from one note or something, and then like a little riff from that guitar as well, and then like drums. It was. Yep.
And if you ask Radiohead, they wouldn't say, "Hey, we were thinking out of the box with that." I mean, I think they think of all of Pablo Honey as a little bit naive and daft, but we can look back and say, "Wow, look at these influences! Look at where this band was already trying to go." The vocal performance by Tom York is very much Pablo Honey, especially during that second when I'm Fused Just in Case I Blow Out. That is. It just sounds so Tom York before he discovered some more unique aspects of what he can do vocally. And this is maybe one of Tom York's most straightforward songs about just pressure and low self-esteem amongst a lot of pressure and things like that. And it's not as it's pretty thinly veiled compared to other things, but fits very much into 90s where, and I'm not saying Tom York did this, but a lot of lyricists thought, I'm being opaque here and nobody can read my thoughts. But in reality, all it took was a little bit of mushrooms and anyone could figure out what you were trying to get to. So what would you give Blowout?
I think a 7.5, because even though I like the 90s stuff that it brings, I don't think it's like, compared to the rest of the 90s stuff, going to be an 8.
Yeah, I think, you liked, so the opener to this album is You, which you probably don't remember all that well. It was months ago, but you did like that song. And because it is a really good 90s rock opener. And this song it has elements of all of those things, but it also has elements of evolution that it might be more than the 90s that you like. Let's see what the kids thought when they heard Blowout. My younger kids draw pictures. I play the song for them, and they draw us a picture based on their thoughts, feelings, and anything else they want. She drew a picture of Medusa. That is a woman with snakes for her hair, and because of the turn to stone thing. Which I think that's probably what Tom York is alluding to there, too. So it wasn't far off. She told me, as the song wrapped up, she said, I'm going to draw Medusa. And I said, that sounds fine. I don't think you'll be far off with a drawing of Medusa. He kind of looks like he did the same thing, but he doesn't know who Medusa is. That's a guy with really crazy hair saying, yay! And you can see in his left hand is what looks like a rock or a stone. And that's what he also went with the line, everything I touch turns to stone. And that's a guy that's excited that he has the power to turn things to stone by just touching it. I do have a couple of comments that I picked out from our last video, which was nude. I only picked these out because they were. I think they should be addressed. Norman Shoulda said, "Dad must have been around for the span of the At Ease forums or something. At Ease. Is he a famous poster on either of the major fan boards? What's his relationship with early web fandom? Did he watch any of the band's webcasts live, etc., etc.?" So he's referring to, I think, the Radiohead fans have long had a presence on the internet from the early days of the internet, and there were a lot of speculative fan type pages where there was and apparently there are pretty well known posters. He's asking if specifically if I'm a famous poster on any of these fan boards. I regretfully say I am not internet savvy at all. My internet foraying is basically limited to the YouTube that I do for this and anything that I have to do for work or research or anything like that. No, I didn't really participate in any of that early stuff. I don't know how long Reddits and subreddits have been around, and I don't know exactly what those are other than forums where people just respond to one another, not so very dissimilar to an old, chat room with a particular subject. I guess maybe in the early days of America Online, where you had chat rooms, I might have dived into a couple of those that were talking about rock or Radiohead or something like that, because clearly I've seen some of that stuff. I just wasn't a heavy participator. YouTube is there, and I like watching a lot of YouTube. So when it comes to like watching live performances and interviews, I've probably listened to every interview. Radiohead interviews, I like listening to those when I'm riding my bike, so I've heard a lot of those repeatedly. So a lot of the stuff I just kind of glean from their own words and fan theories. And so I guess in a way I've participated, but I don't know what he's referencing exactly. So I apologize. No, I hate to break it to you. I'm not. I wish I could make up a handle that would even sound like a famous handle, but I'm not anybody important. I just am a Radiohead nerd. Someone named Happy Safa said, "If you love Radiohead so much, your son should have grown up listening to it while you played it. I danced with my 6-month-old to Radiohead." I will point out that this person did edit this and say I wasn't trying to sound aggressive or antagonistic. I think that's a perfectly logical question. Wait a minute, you love Radiohead and you say that this is the greatest band of all time. Why does your 17-year-old son not? How come he didn't grow up with it in the background? And I don't have a great answer for that either, other than to say that Radiohead has been very personal to me. I listen to Radiohead long play. I ride my bike to work, so I listen a lot when I ride. I've done a lot of long driving on my own, and I can say that I just plug through Radiohead. In defense of why the kids didn't grow up with it, all you guys have just gravitated toward your own music. And of course it's been influenced. Your older brother is a big grunge, 90s alternative fan, and that's kind of where... Because you always had to ride in the car with him, he drove you everywhere, and you guys shared a room for a long time. Those are things where those are kind of your influences. But as far as the music that played as our background, as our soundtrack in our home, that was basically what I've always left it to you guys to kind of play that. Yeah. And if I'm listening to Radiohead on like drives and stuff, you guys were not. We always had the DVD with the headphones, so you guys were always watching something on long drives. We don't play a lot of music in the house because, I mean, frankly, we have a large enough house that we're not all huddled into one room. Not when I was a kid, my dad's music absolutely reverberated throughout the house because when he did anything, he put on his music, much like it sounds like this person does. As far as like the songs I sung to you when you were kids, that was like They Might Be Giants and Fountains of Wayne, because they were just kind of happier, funner tunes. Same thing with Pink Floyd. I mean, I'm absolutely, more than any other band, Radiohead and Pink Floyd are my top bands, but you guys just didn't grow up listening to it because when I listened to it, you guys were headphones on watching Dora the Explorer. Yeah, you never watched Dora the Explorer. I shouldn't have said that. Thomas the Tank Engine. It is weird because I grew up in a house where my dad's music, Elvis Presley, The Carpenters, Neil Diamond, anything 50s rock, Ricky Nelson. I mean, those the Everly Brothers. That was the soundtrack of our home. But my dad, I mean, that was back in the 80s, so he had a big hi-fi setup, and he was just playing these records, and there was no, I'll listen to it on my own little personal device, and we didn't have other things to distract us. Once we were home for the evening, the only thing we had was just family time, and so that was playing over the hi-fi, which in that house you could hear everywhere. So it's just a different time, everything like that. I hope that makes some sense to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for all the nice things you guys say. Continue to love one another. Keep listening to music together. You're now leaving
the 15th floor.